Being a big fan of Sega meant that I was quite fond of racing games. I mean, how could I not be? Sega had absolutely blown me away in the mid-80s with the likes of Outrun and Hang On, so I was always excited to sit down with a good arcade-style racer. When games began to change over to 3D polygons, racing games received a massive boost in realism in both gameplay and visuals. When Need for Speed originally launched on the 3DO, it was a premier experience that was usually reserved for high-end arcade machines. I loved it, and coupled with the crossbred gameplay, it played pretty nice as well. When Saturn and PlayStation came out, they received a big update to the content and visuals of the first game, as well as a massive increase in the sense of speed. With the Saturn fading fast in the West after the release of Nintendo's 64-bit contender, the Need for Speed series sort of switched over to a console exclusive for the PlayStation. And it was 1998's Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit that really grabbed my attention. Loaded with features that crushed the original, it would be one of my favorite racing titles that entire generation. In this episode, we will be taking a look at it, as well as its PC counterpart, which was my very first 3D accelerated adventure. Need for Speed 3 was developed by EA Canada and released in March of 1998 for the PlayStation. It was designed to capitalize on the previous game's penchant for exotic cars and races, while adding a few new additions to make things more interesting. As the name would imply, the star of these choices is Hot Pursuit, which is a battle between you and another car while being chased by the law. These guys are out for blood and straight up insane. They will crash into you head on, take out traffic to stay in the hunt, and generally make your life miserable. The key is to keep moving and keep your speed up enough to stay in play. Slow down too much and you get captured. There's a single race option that you can choose where you can race one-on-one or against a full grid of different cars. This mode doesn't have the cops after you, so it's a pure race experience. The practice mode is a simple option to basically take a test drive free of opponents, cops, and traffic. You can use a ghost car to help you better your times, and you can choose various gameplay assists to alter the gameplay to your liking. The tournament mode is a series of races you must win, while knockout is a type of race where you must stay ahead of the last place being knocked out. Should you fall behind, it's an instant loss. All of these modes have the option to change the direction you race, a mirror mode, night and day, and even the weather. Changing these options can really make each and every track feel different. Racing at night adds extra challenge because you can't see that far ahead of you, and just mirroring things really affects your muscle memory. This is actually a huge strength of this game, the ability to mix options and change the feel of everything. To add to this, you can open additional tracks and cars by defeating the tournament and knockout races and their various difficulties. These extra tracks add variety and are longer than the set of stages you get in the beginning, making the Hot Pursuit mode even more challenging. And I do mean challenging. The AI is fast, aggressive, and can pull off things you can't, making them sort of like vehicular Terminators. When you finally get that first place win, you absolutely earned it. You get the usual suspects in terms of cars as well. Lamborghinis, Jaguars, Ferraris, and Mercedes all make the list, each with their own characteristics. There isn't a ton of customizations you can do to them, but you can change the color to something more to your liking. The modes we just went over can be played split screen against a second player or against an AI opponent.
You are now under arrest. License revoked.
Need for Speed was always a great looking series, but Part 3 here takes things to the next level. While the engine itself is speedy and detailed, you get the added boon of much improved lighting, weather effects, and exaggerated physics. This made for a hell of a good looking game for 1998. The 4 main courses have a great variety in their visual appeal. You get themes like fall leaves, cityscapes, desert canyons, and snowy mountains. Each of these have a secondary course that changes up their difficulty and aesthetics a bit, adding even more to the variety and appeal. All of it runs well considering the flashy effects the engine can pull off. To see everything popping at once was actually quite impressive on the old PlayStation. Having a game running a course at night, with all the headlights, sirens, and storms firing off, was something I never got tired of. The replay feature alone ate up hours of my time because everything looked just so damn good. The cars are kinda low on the polygon counts and there is a fair bit of texture warping, but neither of these things undermine an otherwise killer presentation. Surprisingly, the PlayStation is able to keep most of the visual pizzazz up in split screen mode as well. It does take a hit on performance, and you will notice more pop-in, but remains quite playable. This generation of games saw massive leaps in graphical quality during its cycle. To see this after the simple delights of games like Ridge Racer and the first Need for Speed was something else. It has of course aged and doesn't have quite the appeal it did back then, but this was easily one of the better looking games on the platform that year. The music you will encounter here is not particularly memorable but gets the job done. It's a mix of different styles from electronica to rock and is used dynamically during the race depending on what's happening. Being chased by the cops for a long period of time gets you something faster and dramatic, for instance. It's all licensed by artists I've never heard of before, so I can't really drop a bunch of examples for you. I did turn it up a bit for this segment, so hopefully it gives you a good idea of what you'll get. This section is normally reserved for critiques, or where I tell you about some weaknesses or how the game could have been better. In this regard, I have little to say. The Need for Speed 3 was damn near a perfect console racing game. It struck a great balance of easy to pick up and play, arcade-style gameplay, over-the-top physics, and the beauty of real-world locations. Add in the many options you can change to mix up the way the tracks are laid out, and it was a game that easily surpassed most of the stuff before it. Again, flying down a track at night, sirens and bullhorns blaring, headlights flashing all around was some of the best times I had on the PlayStation, particularly when a bud was with me to experience it all. And to top it all off, the game was nothing short of gorgeous. The unique locations, the varied terrain, the different cars, all made for a lush and exotic racer that easily trashed the previous two games. Electronic Arts also didn't release this title on any other console platform, so if you were a kid with only a Saturn or Nintendo 64, you were crap out of luck. If I had to force myself to come up with some negatives, I guess I could nitpick the aggressive AI that does things you aren't capable of, and I could complain about some of the manufacturers that you can't use in Hot Pursuit mode. These truly are nitpicks, however, as you'll be having so much fun running through roadblocks and avoiding spike strips, you won't care at all what kind of car you're driving, or how much the cops cheat to try to slow you down. Need for Speed 3 redefined just how entertaining a racing game could be. Shortly after the PlayStation release of Need for Speed 3, Electronic Arts had EA Seattle port the game to the PC. Now being late 1998, the popularity of 3D accelerators were really taking off, and cards like the 3DFX Voodoo 2 were taking graphics well beyond what consoles were capable of. It was around this time that I purchased my very first gaming caliber PC, and Need for Speed 3 was my very first game. Seeing this beast accelerate was one of the highlights of my gaming journey. I had never owned anything at home that looked like this. It was so smooth, so polished, almost as if it had been ported to the Model 2 by Sega themselves. The PC version had additional content as well, including a hot pursuit mode that lets you be the cops. My words cannot accurately describe just how much this game influenced my future purchases. It took me from a die-hard console veteran to a kid in a candy shop grabbing everything I could for my shiny new toy. I had no clue at all just how much better a game could look on the PC, and my world would never be the same because of it. There is also a patch for modern PCs to run this game in all its glory. If it sounds like I'm being awfully generous to Need for Speed 3, it's because I am, and it deserves it. Before this, the better racing games had been very fun for me, but this turned up the fun factor to 11. The control was easy to manage, the visuals top-notch, and the content locked and loaded for weeks of stuff to learn and master. Cops had chased me in games before, but not like this, and certainly not with this many options behind it. It made the first two Need for Speed games look like they were driving Miss Daisy, and if you had a friend with you, it had nearly endless replay value. EA has tried to capture this game's magic with sequels and remakes to various levels of success, but I'll never forget the original. Add in the journey I took with it as my very first 3D accelerated PC title, and it's a landmark in my gaming history with few equals. I had always loved EA's games during the 16-bit era, but this gave me a new appreciation for just how good they could be. I often think about those days when I see the content they release today, and wonder just what the hell happened. If you've never played Need for Speed 3, I recommend you try, whether it's the modded PC version on a modern machine or the PlayStation original. You likely won't have the same experience I did, but I'm positive you'll come away agreeing it's a heck of a fun game all the same. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.